Outer Banks has officially come to an end. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to other videos. Today I've got my review, no spoilers, of Outer Banks Season 5. This is the 5th and final season of the Netflix show that first premiered back in 2020. All 10 episodes of the final season are now streaming on Netflix, and I was fortunate enough to be able to watch them early for this review. So I'm going to give you my honest, again, spoiler-free thoughts on all 10 episodes of the season. Before I get into it, hit that like button, comment down below your thoughts on this season as you watch through it, and of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 200,000 subscribers here on the channel. It will mean quite a bit. And be sure to stay tuned for some more Outer Banks videos coming soon. I'm going to do a spoiler review, probably a character tier list, and a seasons ranking. So lots of good stuff coming, and especially over on my TikTok at FilmStock, I'll have lots of videos that won't even make it here on YouTube. So be sure to follow me over there if you're interested in more Outer Banks content. So when it comes down to OBX, it's a show that I've honestly fallen in love with over the years. I wouldn't classify it as like a guilty pleasure because I don't think it's bad TV, but I do embrace the cheesy soap opera nature of the show at times, with a teenage drama is cranked up to 1,000, and they're just getting into these ridiculous situations that would never be able to happen in the real world. It's kind of brought me this weird sense of comfort, and I've learned to embrace Outer Banks, and so saying farewell to the show was definitely sad. When it comes to the seasons, I think 1 and 2 are the best, 3 is my least favorite, and then 4 was a rise back up, but of course it ended with, spoilers, the gutsy decision to kill off JJ Maybank. Was that impacted by behind-the-scenes drama between actors? Let me know your take down below. Most likely yes. But going into season 5, there's no JJ, so that automatically was going to be, take some getting used to. But we also had to wait a little bit. It was 2024 when the last season came out. The trailers were interesting, so I was a little skeptical, a little nervous going in, and I can confidently say, having seen all 10 episodes, Outer Banks lands the plane. And it brings me nothing but joy to report that, especially in an era where TV shows so often can fumble. Thankfully, Outer Banks has a satisfying ending. It's not without its flaws this final season, but I'm going to start with a lot of my pros because I honestly was pretty happy as this season progressed. Now, I will say, the first 2 episodes took a little getting used to because it kind of just felt like they were tying up the loose ends of season 4. In fact, the first 2 episodes of the season felt like they were supposed to be in season 4. There was a very clear break when you get into episode 3. You're like, oh, this is how Outer Banks should have opened its final season. This feels like we're actually starting a season. And you'll know what I mean when you watch it. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it just felt like I needed to put that disclaimer out there because I watched the first episode earlier than the others. It was on the To Doom stream. I was kind of taken aback by the fact that it really wasn't in the Outer Banks at all. Anyway, let's get down to it. I like how immediately the main characters are still in the aftermath of the death of JJ Maybank. That happens at the end of 4, and this season picks up pretty much right after that. So everyone is still grieving, and they're processing this loss in their own unique way. And it's made pretty clear that Kiara is like the main character of this final season. We're going to be following her emotional journey and, coming to terms with the death of JJ. How will she handle that? Will she buy into the narrative of the Blue Crown and think that maybe, just maybe, she can bring him back from the dead? Or will that all be a myth? I won't reveal that here. You got to watch the season to find out. But it certainly answers those questions and tackles the grieving process for Kiara. She lost the love of her life, essentially. It's a huge show-altering death with JJ. So, of course, Key was impacted, but John B., JJ's best friend, and Pope, all of his really good friends, are still wrestling with that as well. So everyone's got their own emotional baggage early on, and they're all still grieving the loss of such a great friend. When it comes to the villain of this season, we knew it would be Chandler Groff, right? He's got the Blue Crown at the end of season 4. He's on the run in season 5. It's made pretty clear early on, and really, I gotta shout out the actor because he goes full, 80s movie villain. The cheesiness is cranked up to 1,000 with his line deliveries, even with, his wardrobe choice. Early on, he's wearing, a Newsies hat. He's disguising himself, walking around the streets. You just feel this different energy with him. He's extremely unhinged, full-on psychotic multiple times throughout the season. He threatens to kill someone or tries to, physically gets into it with someone. You don't ever know what he's going to do. And the thing about Groff this season is he's so slippery. It seems like our characters might have him cornered and that's it. It's going to be the end of Groff. And then nope, he's able to slip out of any situation like a snake. That's really what he is this season. And it gets frustrating at a certain point, honestly, I guess to the credit of the villain. But I was like, damn, you had him. It kind of reminds me of when there's a villain who comes back every season in a network TV show and he always gets away at the end. It's kind of how I felt about Groff for the majority of this season. With Outer Banks, action doesn't really come to mind. Yes, there can be grand set pieces, but I actually have to shout out a couple action scenes in this show. Of course, they're not the best choreographed or most visually mind-blowing. I'll talk about that with the cons, but there's like a clear homage almost to Mission Impossible multiple times. It's my favorite action movie franchise straight up, but top tier franchise for me. and there's like a bike chase through the streets that felt very Rogue Nation. There's a scene on a runway with a plane and a bike and a van, and I'm like, this feels like something out of Dead Reckoning. There's even a scene on a bridge involving some destruction that you see in the trailer, and I was like, this is kind of high stakes for Outer Banks. So they really increased the scale for this final season. They went for it with some of these intense action moments, even chase scenes, you know, whether that's in Kildare, through the streets, or on foot. There are some riveting sequences that feel high stakes and were anxiety inducing. A lot of these anxiety inducing situations, I think, were because of how dumb our main characters were being. Again, I'll talk about that momentarily, but they were there nonetheless. My nerves were on edge. I was feeling it. You got action, you got treasure hunting, of course, but you also have romance in this final season. We already knew we were getting John B. and Sarah. Sarah Cameron is pregnant, and they handle that, so them on this journey to, you know, being parents, that is kind of fleshed out throughout this season. You get more of Pope and Cleo, who I think are a criminally underrated duo in the show, and you get to see some real sweet moments between them, but also having to be there for each other, especially after season 4, where, you know, they're together when Pope kills one of the Corsairs, and it's taken a toll on him. Like, he is really dealing with that. It's hit him. He killed someone in season 4. Even though it was in self-defense, he is going through the ringer, and Cleo is there for him as much as you can be, again, dancing around spoilers here. And so Pope's arc is really fascinating early on. It's a really turn for him that we haven't seen, especially when you know Pope. You're like, wow, that's what he's getting into. That's what he's doing with his time. So it was a bizarre way, but I think it ended up working for him and how he was processing this traumatic event. All that to say, there's some awesome budding romance between them. They've already been a thing, but they're heating up, we'll say. And then I liked how there was like sprinkles of rekindled romance between Rafe and Sophia. I don't want to get any details out here because, again, spoilers, but they encounter one another. Of course, in season 4, Sophia betrayed Rafe, so he was like, I'm done with her, but they re-enter each other's lives in some way, shape, or form this season, and I really like what they did with those two. Drew Starkey's performance as Rafe, to me, has always been the most attention-grabbing performance, and I think that stands out here. There's every line he delivers, whether it's, you know, in a serious situation, he's playing drunk, no matter what it is, I'm locked in, and to me, he is the best performance yet again here as Rafe. I also like how this season had plenty of callbacks for fans of Outer Banks without being in your face about it. Sometimes with like legacy sequels, mainly at the movies, if it's been like 10 to 20 years between a movie and its sequel, that movie will go out of its way to just throw iconic quotes and lines and recreate scenes, and it'll do that, it'll throw it in your face. Outer Banks Season 5 doesn't do that. There are callbacks, some more subtle than others, that hardcore fans of the show will pick up on, but I really liked how they were able to incorporate those without it ever being just like blatant flashing light, hey, this is a callback to Season 1, when this character did this, or when this character said this. They avoid that, and it all flows together so naturally. On top of that, there are plenty of side characters who have their final curtain call. Sometimes shows forget about characters in the final season who were in previous seasons, but I'll throw some names around. This isn't a spoiler. Barry has a role that I dug here. I really like what they did with Barry. Topper's in here. You even have someone like Barracuda Mike popping up. So every minor character, essentially, that I can think of. There are some I won't say. I was like, oh, I didn't expect to see that person, but that was a pleasant little cameo. So everyone pops up, for the most part. Characters from all seasons are showing up in some capacity, and I really like when shows do that in a final season. It reminds me of like the final ep of Breaking Bad, having so many characters show up and having that final moment.
Oh, yeah, right.
With that, Shoop has an increased role. He's one of the main characters this season. Not like a ton of screen time, but more than any of the other seasons, and I like that. Shoop's always been a really interesting character to me, seeing where his moral compass is at on the island. And when it comes to the setting of Outer Banks, obviously not the entire season takes place in the Outer Banks. A good chunk of it does, and that's when the show really finds its footing and catches stride. Like, for a little bit, you're kind of wrapping up season 4, so you can, you know, infer where they might be. They're not in the Outer Banks. When we return, though, it feels like the classic island vibes of Outer Banks. Very quickly, with the needle drops, with the atmosphere, they're able to return to early seasons of Outer Banks, where you catch almost that carefree summer vibe in the air, where you just want to hang out, go, you know, outside, watch the sunset, maybe crack a beer if you're of age, of course, and just hang out. And that's what I love about Outer Banks. And to me, this final season embodied that feel perfectly. Throughout the majority of the season, it just took a little longer than I would have liked to get there because you had to get through those first 2 episodes. So with that, I found the season balanced the settings pretty well. Of course, there's still globe-spanning moments outside of the Outer Banks in other countries, hell, even in other cities in the US, or a city, I should say. But not everything's in the Outer Banks, but that's kind of how most seasons are. I think they juggle it really well, and when the season matters most, when the stakes are at the highest, I feel like they're at home. and that's fitting for it being a show called Outer Banks to have the biggest moments of your season probably, right, be in the Outer Banks. With the final season, you only can hope that there's those emotional moments that pull on the heartstrings, and they certainly got them here. There are some montages, some flashbacks that sort of stir up those emotions about the journey our characters have gone on throughout the show, and in the end, I feel like there was really satisfying payoff for most of these character relationships, if not every single one of them. I can't think of one where I'm like, man, I wish they did this with this character, this didn't end well. I think there's rewarding payoff for every single character. I was satisfied with how everyone's arc came to a close, and what more can you really ask for of a series finale, of a show that ran 5 seasons? It was satisfying in the manner in which they landed the plane, and the final 10 minutes I thought were perfect. I really was just like, this is how I envision the show ending, and I'm so happy they're actually going through with it. They also play some great songs on the soundtrack throughout the finale episode, but the final song I thought was perfect. I immediately went and loaded it onto my Spotify. It's going to be a song that I'm playing on aux for days to come. So if you've made it this far, it's pretty clear I enjoyed this final season. I do have some cons though, some issues, nitpicks, and some larger grievances, but nothing crazy. I am going to start with the fact that, like I've kind of hinted at, the first 2 episodes I think could have been condensed into 30 minutes. I don't know why they even stretched out as long as they did. To me, the situation the Pogues are in could have been resolved very fast. It could have nearly been that the first 3 episodes were the premiere and it was just an hour long. They could have cut some of the fat out of the situation they were stuck in, and it would have sort of streamlined the pacing early on. Because with any season of TV, you want to hook the viewer immediately. And if you're not a huge Outer Banks fan, I understand if you watch the first 2 only, you're like, I might take a little break for a bit. The first 2 episodes, I think, are a lot slower. They feel almost disconnected from the real struggle of the season. Like I said, it feels like they were obligated to conclude loose ends from season 4. This still bled over into the rest of the season, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it was just like, ugh, we have to clean this mess up real quick before we can get back home to the Outer Banks. Something that infuriated me this season, though, and I say that kind of jokingly, half seriously, every character had at least 1 or 2 moments where they were a complete and utter moron. Now, it goes without saying the Pogues have their fair share of stupid moments. The opening episode of season 4 really highlights that, and they aren't always the brightest, right? P4L, though. They are just in situation after situation this season where they're trying to be sneaky, whether that is sneaking into a house to steal something, and they are being obnoxiously loud. They're really just trying to be suspicious, and even then, they don't understand the concept of whispering or being like, hey, I'm just going to text you this information, because almost every character will shout something to another character, a crucial piece of information about their location or where they're headed next, and another character will overhear that. Because, yeah, they're within earshot and you're screaming, hey, we're headed here, guys. Be quiet. Just send a text. I don't understand. I don't. It frustrated me time and time again. It led to anxiety-inducing situations at one point where I was like, you guys are being so stupid that I'm cringing. I'm physically tensing up at how dumb you're being right now. I know you have more brains than that, Kiara. John B., why are you acting like this? I was just losing it at one point, and that's kind of a recurring thing throughout the season. So if you have a short fuse for characters being idiots, get ready for this, because there are some dumbass things that happen in Outer Banks Season 5. Another nitpick of mine that I bring up literally every time I talk about Outer Banks is there's a handful of scenes that the viewer's supposed to believe is taking place at nighttime out on the water, and it's just so clear. They shot it during the day and they slapped a blue filter on it to try and make it look like nighttime. It's kind of become an endearing staple of Outer Banks at this point, so it's not like, damn them for doing that. It's just something that's so noticeable. I laugh every time I see it. It's become almost a staple, right? A trademark of Outer Banks. And once you get into the meat of this season and the plot starts to unravel, you could certainly make the argument that it's a bit overstuffed with villains. We know Chandler Groff's the main villain. He's in pursuit of the Blue Crown. He possesses it to start the season, and Kiara's on this quest for revenge, so by default, the rest of the Pogues also want revenge. They're on this quest to find him, but the Corsairs from Season 4 make a return, these mercenaries who really don't have much emotion at all, and there are more of them, it felt like, this season. They have more screen time, so they're taking away from the Pogues, especially again in those first 2 episodes. And then another threat arises back home on the island, where that's not as pressing of a matter. It increases the stakes back home for sure, and kind of helps to fill the void in the middle of this season. But these other dudes just show up and you're like, oh, we've never seen them, and their presence is kind of unnecessary and silly. But I guess it does make for some high-stakes moments, at least in the time being, because not everything can be globe-spanning for Outer Banks. Another thing, too, that I noticed, and I can talk about this, I guess, more in spoilers if I even remember to bring it up, because it's not that big of a deal, is when did Kiara become Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series, or damn near Spider-Man? There are so many times in the first couple episodes, and then even as the season progresses, where Kiara just has like the most insane upper body strength of all time. She's like jumping out of moving vehicles and like latching onto things. She's scaling the side of buildings. It's almost literally like you're playing the Uncharted video games and you're like climbing up a building as Nathan Drake. I feel like Key had multiple moments where I was like, first of all, probably not possible, and secondly, more power to you. I guess she was grinding in between seasons, which was only a couple days, mind you, canonically, if that. She was like a full-on acrobat, going Spidey. I was like, oh, wow. It took me out almost a little bit. And again, we're just getting into nitpick territory. These aren't actual things that ruined Outer Banks or anything like that. But time moves so fast. I noticed it the most this season. Maybe that was the way the season was edited, but there would be moments where characters are like, we got to get there, and then it'll cut, and immediately they'll be there. And like we as the viewer are supposed to assume, oh, 30 or 40 minutes passed or an hour passed. But the way the show's edited, it's almost like they rushed through those lull moments, and boom, characters just appear. It's kind of like Derek in Teen Wolf, the show. If you know, you know. There's no doors for him. He's just there. A lot of times our characters just are there. It's so weird because they'll be having a conversation in one location on the island, and this character will be like, oh, I'll meet you there. I'll see you there. Boom, they're there immediately. It's just the editing and flow of the episodes, so that was kind of always jarring. It took a while to get used to this time around. And my final point when it comes to the cons, I can't really elaborate on, and it's happened in past seasons, but this season in particular really tried to go in on the fake outs. And when I say fake outs, you kind of know what I probably mean. Oh my gosh, is so-and-so about to die? And I'm not saying if they do or don't kill anyone, because I don't want to spoil the show, but you can imagine if a certain someone is in a situation at a certain point in the season, it might be okay for them at least that time, right? And so it kind of abused that to me, where it was like, oh, time and time again, we're faking out. This character might be going to the hospital. This character is not going to make it, but you have a good feeling they are. I feel like they went a little too hard on the fake outs, in my opinion. But that's really it for my negatives. All in all, I enjoyed the hell out of watching this, and I honestly got emotional watching the final credits, which you'll want to do. It's almost like a celebration of the show. I really like what they did and what they put together. I could tell it was a fun day on set as you watch through the credits. Again, no spoilers, of course. Probably said that a million times now. I'd say the season had a rocky start, tying up some loose ends from season 4, and it took getting used to with the absence of JJ, because of course he's not in this season, so the group dynamic shifts, but I think they make up for it in the long run. And I enjoyed this final adventure with the Pogues. There actually ended up being a pretty strong message delivered about the grieving process, finding peace within yourself, even mental clarity. They get into like the true meaning of friendship, all this stuff. There's a pretty beautiful message behind all of it here in this final season of Outer Banks. And if you're a fan of this show, I think you're really going to enjoy this season. I think you will be highly satisfied with how they land the plane. It's kind of a beautiful final 10 minutes, and really the whole finale episode is one of the most engaging to me of the whole show. Like, I would definitely say if you were kind of waning on season 3 and 4, this is a huge step up in quality, in my opinion. You don't have JJ Maybank, and if you love JJ, I get it. Trust me, I miss him too. They are able to make up for that overall, in my opinion. And to me, Outer Banks season 5 was a win. It delivered. Yeah, it had a slow start. Some moments were a bit cheesy. You know, the visuals are hit or miss. It's Outer Banks. They don't really have that big of a budget for that kind of stuff, you know? But I was moved, damn it. I felt something in my soul and my heart as I watched this final season, especially in the end. We've said goodbye to so many shows lately, and I'm just happy to say that Outer Banks landed the plane to the point where I can go back and watch this show and not be like, oh, I can't believe they ended it this way. I can't believe it. It's not that kind of show. Didn't have the pressure of something with superheroes or huge lore. It just had to do the characters justice, and damn did it do that. I can happily say Outer Banks lands the plane, and if you're worried, I don't think you need to be. I couldn't ask for more. I'm happy. I'm content. And you know what? P for L, baby. But those are my thoughts on this final season of Outer Banks. Spoiler free. I'll have more spoiler videos coming soon, so be on the lookout for those. But hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and be on the lookout for more videos coming very soon. Thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, P for L.